All right, I went off-roading over the summer and ended up breaking an axle shaft just on the outer side. So I'm going to show you how to replace an axle shaft, and this is going to be really directly related to also how to replace a universal joint on an axle shaft. It's really not as hard as it seems like it will be. All right, so the first thing we're going to need to do to get to this axle shaft is take off the brake caliper, which on this Jeep happens to be 2 half-inch bolts, one up here and one down here. Yeah, so instead of 1/2, it's just 1/2. It's a 12mm bolt. And then after you get those bolts undone, pry this off like so. Hey. Just like that. And there it is. And then be sure not to hang this by its cord. Rather rest it on something. I usually use the spring that you guys are sitting on. And then you can remove the rotor. Now, you guys at home would have to take the nut off of this side here. But because mine is broken, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take the hub off, which would be step 2 for you guys. After you undo this, you would take the hub off. But I'm going to take the hub off, and it's going to take this broken section with it. So that's 3 12-point bolts that are in the backside here. Not that one, this one here, this one here, and this one up here. Where's that? There, there, there. This is hard to do because I can't see. But those are them. 1, 2, 3. And that is also a 12mm. No, that one's 1/2. See, I knew one of them was a 1/2. Okay. Now I'm just gonna loosen these ones up, because in order to take the hub off and still be able to use the hub, I'm going to need to hit the back sides of these bolts and push the hub out, as opposed to using a hub puller, which would separate the hub into 2 pieces, which is okay when you're replacing the hub. But in our case, we don't want to replace the hub because it's actually fairly new. Okay, so now I grab that hammer. Alright, so with a pair of needle nose pliers, this, remember, will be on your vehicle and you'll be looking at the side of the wheel here. But I have to do this in an opposite order. But you'll take this pin, bend it straight, and be careful with it. You don't want to break it because it will be reused again later. Okay. So after you manage to straighten out that pin, what you should do is take these needle nose pliers, stick them inside the loop there, and then I like to take the hammer and hit it out like that. Now that pin did break, but you know, it is what it is. And then once you get that pin free, you can take this cap off, and then there's a spring, and then there's a giant nut. Now this nut is torqued on there so tightly that many times we have had to take like a spare tire that has the cap off so that you can still access this, mount the tire, drop the vehicle down, and put it in park and crank this off. I have mine in a vise, so that's going to be okay for me. For you guys, I'd say probably just take that center cap off of your tire, mount it up, and drop the vehicle back down and crank it off. Now the size of this is just giant. Happen to grab the right one there. It's a 36 millimeter. The other thing that you could do is use an impact wrench. If you have one, electric or air, whatever. But I've already had mine off, so I know it was loose. But sometimes these get really rusted on there. So again, that's a 36 millimeter socket. And I'm just going to set that to the side here. And then there's a washer right underneath that. And it should come out. Just like that. And then your hub is free. And now would be a good time to replace your hub if your hub is bad. Well, now that I have this free, you can see how busted I really did make this when I went off-roading. You can see I broke it there. I broke that on that side. And all right, now that you have your axle shaft, or in my case, your broken axle shaft free, now you just got to work on taking out this axle U-joint right here, which requires you to take this, which is together on yours, but broken on mine, and you're going to need to press out and pull out the cap that would be on this side, and then push the other way, pull this cap off, and then you'll be able to pull it free. So I'm going to show you how to do that on this end, because that's all that I have left. So now, what you're going to need in order to press out those is a socket, one larger than the, all right, one that's larger than the cap, and another that's smaller than the cap. So, just as a visual aid, here's the brand new one. What's going to happen is it's going to get pressed into there, being pushed by this here. And we're going to use the vise to do that. Now, hopefully you have a vise, because if you don't have a vise, this is going to get a little bit more difficult for you. And if you have a press, then I would say use the press. Ah, now I almost forgot here. The C-clips that are inside of here need to come out. Right inside of here, in that ridge, there is a C-clip. Let's see if we can't find it. Okay, I found one of them here. So I'm on the edge of the clip. Just give it a tap, and that starts it. You can see it up close here. So now you can see the gap right in here. This right here is the clip that needs to come out. And I just launched it across the room. So on one side we have the big one, and on the other side we have the little one. This is always easier with a second person, but my second person is out of town. All right, so now I got that clamped in there, and like I said, the small socket goes on the cap, and then the large socket lets the cap come into it. Oh, and hopefully I can get this to break loose. Okay, that just started to break loose. All right, and there it popped. You see how this is all the way up against here? Now I should be able to take it off. And you can see how that cap sticks out the one side, comes out like that. Now, sometimes you can just pull them right out like this, but in my case, that's not going to be so. So I'm going to have to pull that cap off. Oh, and of course it's nice and rusty on there. So hopefully we can get the vice grips and pull it off. Or channel locks or whatever you got. All right, now the cap is free spinning and it's off. And you see all the little needle bearings inside of there? That's very important that when we do the new ones, that we don't end up losing those. All right. And now we're going to push it back in the opposite direction so that we can pull the other cap off. And as we can see, either I have the wrong axle shaft or I have the wrong size U-joint, as always. And as it looks like, I have the wrong size U-joint. Okay, so we're back at it again today, but this time we have the right joint. So, like I was discussing a couple days ago, we're going to put it into the short side of the shaft first. So, I'm going to pull both caps off carefully, ensuring that the needles stay in place. I'm going to set them on a nice safe surface. And then we'll slip it into place, trying not to touch, but it will happen. And we'll take the cap and we'll push it back this way. And you'll see how gentle I am being, just to ensure that I am not going to lose those needles. So just to get it started, I'm just going to use it like this. Push that cap on there. There it goes. Okay. And then I'm going to flip it around and stick the cap in on this end. Okay, I felt like I was hitting the top of the needle, so just pull it out. Check to make sure that you didn't knock over any. And I like to slide it about halfway in between each, so that I know that it started on the needles on both sides. Because I had it once where I crushed one of those needle bearings. And that was not good. Not good at all. Okay. So there it goes, and it's getting pushed on. So let's get it balanced in the middle there. You can see that the side there is further out than this side here. So the idea is to just balance it. But what I might do is I might stick that pin, the C-clip, into its zone here, in between the two ridges. And then that way, when I push it back, it'll stop it, and I can put the pin in on this end here. Okay, so let's see. And there it is, it just clipped right in. And now I'm going to push it back the other way, and then put the other clip in. Looks like there's almost enough space to put that clip in on this end. Hopefully there is. You should be able to hear it clip in. I'm going to use a little bit more persuasion, just gentle persuasion. Okay, and I saw that just clipped in the rest of the way. All right, so I know that's fully seated. The new joint is all back together. Now it's kind of stiff, but it's not awful. But here's what you do is you Just hit it a little bit. It should be, yeah, see, that's not too bad. I'm able to move it. Sometimes it gets so stiff that you just can't move it. So just tap it with a hammer just to get it loose. And then you should be able to move it. Now this one comes with a greasable fitting. So I'm going to have to put that in right into that hole that you can see right there. And it's just a little needle thing. Goes in with a flathead screwdriver. And that's it. And it's just a matter of putting everything back together. So I'm just taking this axle shaft and ramming it down in there. There it is. It's all the way in. Now I'll take my hub and stick it back where it should be. And this order now, this order that I'm going to be going in, is the order that you should follow when you're taking this apart. I know it's a pain in the ass to see a video done in the wrong order, but that's just how it ended up working out. Just make sure that the heat shield is lined up so you don't damage any bolts trying to screw them in where there's not even a hole lined up. So this is just putting those 3 bolts back in where they should be. It seems like, yeah, there it was. That was the heat shield in my way. Okay, so when you crank this down, you want to make sure you do it evenly because you are pulling the hub back into its place. Now there should be an axle seal here. It's plastic, but of course I ended up losing mine, and I'll just need to get a new one at some point in time. But it should be able to just clip on from what it looks like from my other side here. Now, I gotta put the nut back on. Remember, washer first, and then the nut. And you can see how I got to a point, and now it's turning everything. So what I need to do is I need to find a way to stop this axle from being able to free spin, and that way I can crank down on this as hard as I need to. So I was going to use my impact, but then I said, you know what, I got to show these guys how to do it. So you can see in the center of the wheel there, the cap is missing because I just pounded that out with a rubber mallet. Yours might be different. They might have clips on the back or something. But now it's just a matter of grabbing that wrench and cranking down on it. And I'm going to grab a bar so I can provide a whole lot of torque on that. Just slide it over the back of the handle and crank it. I'm sure there's a torque spec on this somewhere, but I think I'm good. So now it's just a matter of putting the spring on, putting this cap on, sticking the pin through. Same exact way I did it when I took it out. Who'd funk? Okay, and then just bend that pin back over. All right, so now that you got the pin in, it's just a matter of putting that brake caliper back on and then remounting the tire.